Hi, hi everyone. Good to see you. I'm delighted to have so many of you here, and I hope you also had a fruitful, or still have, it's not ending yet, fruitful Climate Week with great connections and great impressions. On my side, I can share, like, in my point of view, carbon removal and air capture have arrived. Like in all meetings I've been, and I told them, hey, you know, I'm working on air capture. People know what air capture is, and they know why it's needed. And well, you might think, what is he talking about? That's the most normal thing on earth. Like when I started the firm 14 years ago, or only a couple of years back, this hasn't been normal at all. So that's a big achievement. And exactly this awareness is needed that we can accelerate this industry much further. And talking about acceleration, it feels like yesterday since I've seen many of the faces in Zurich at the DAC summit. And since then, the industry has accelerated a lot, and we have seen great, very positive dynamics. And just to name two highlights on our end. The first one, we applied for 3 projects in the framework of the DACAP program of the Department of Energy, and 3 out of 3 received the award notification. This is an exceptional result, and those 3 projects will be in Louisiana, in North Dakota, and in California. All of them have the potential to be extended to 1 million ton carbon removal capacity by the early 2030s, where the first one, the Louisiana one, is on the fastest track and will see the most significant support of up to 600 million. So that's an amazing achievement and a great way of heading towards. So the second highlight is actually one that we announced today. Like today we announced a partnership with the Great Carbon Valley. It's a company based in Kenya. And we are planning on bringing direct air capture plants to Kenya, and also with the idea of establishing a megaton removal hub by early 2030. And what I'm especially excited about for this project is that this project shows that air capture can cater to additional benefits. Like besides the obvious one, the climate benefit, we have the chance to bring economic benefit to the global south. This is a very, very important point. And the second point is maybe less intuitive. It also helps to catalyze the deployment of renewable energies in those regions. Kenya, for example, is very rich in renewable energy, but there are no off-takers to take all of this renewable energy that could be produced. With DAC technology, we are of course very happy to take renewable energy, and we are very happy to take it for a very long time. So we are very happy to sign 20-year power purchase agreements with renewable providers. So I think this project, especially with those 2 aspects, is especially refreshing and exciting and brings new dimensions to direct air capture as a topic. Now, with this portfolio of the support we're getting in the DOE program and the project we announced in Kenya, that is clearly the most concrete multi-megaton portfolio that's out there in the street. And with the partners we have established, we have very concrete projects both in the DOE program, partners for storage, partners for construction, same for Kenya, we'll be building up that. And with those partners, I'm also very confident that we can check our next big milestone in 2030, which is multi-megaton carbon removal. Now with that, thank you again all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the evening. And I'm very pleased to have Bilha from Great Carbon Valley with us to share a couple of words, and later Rich Lesser, Global Chair at the Boston Consulting Group. Thank you.
I think today is literally the culmination of maybe 2 or 3 years of a dream, work, narrative building, lots of different conversations, trying to convince people that it is possible to do carbon dioxide removals in the global south, and not just nature-based stuff, which is what people tend to think about the south, but we can actually be at the cutting edge of the most cutting-edge technologies and the most forefront technologies as far as carbon removals is concerned. So my name is Bilha Ndirangu. I'm the CEO of Great Carbon Valley, and very excited to be getting into partnership with Climeworks. That was announced today, so you should be seeing it out in the papers today, tomorrow. But really excited to actually have a mammoth plant being built in one of our sites in East Africa. And so what Great Carbon Valley is doing is essentially taking this narrative where we honestly believe, and to what Christoph articulated, the Global South, and in particular Kenya, East Africa, is probably some of the best places to do direct air capture and removals for a couple of reasons. One, we know dark. I mean, the one thing that people talk about dark is that it's too energy intensive. We shouldn't really be using that kind of energy to remove carbon. And to some extent, that makes sense when you're using fossilized electricity to do that, because you're using carbon to remove carbon. We happen to sit on a side of the world where our grid is about 95% green, and that's at a point where we've not utilized maybe 95% of our potential capacity. So lots of geothermal, lots of wind, lots of solar. And a big part of the question has been, what do you utilize this energy for? Not enough energy is being produced because there is no captive demand. And energy producers will say, we can't really develop the projects because who's going to ask for them? The prices are too high, so we don't really see industry. And so what Great Carbon Valley is doing is sort of saying, let's find projects that require lots of massive green power, find ways to de-risk them, and then bring them to East Africa. And so we'll actually build green industrial hubs across multiple countries in East Africa, make them infrastructure ready, have renewable energy, have all the infrastructure that's needed. And then ideally that allows for carbon and mineral storage to happen in these parts, and hopefully we begin to build an ecosystem of removals, engineered and permanent removals on the Global South. And one of the things that we're really hoping to do is utilize DAC as an anchor client, where we're saying, here is a really massive energy, energy intensive industry that requires lots of energy. Here is a country or countries that have lots of latent energy but can't develop it because no one's going to pay for it. And can we marry this two? And for me, the excitement about the Climeworks deal is that it actually begins to move that from the dream, the conversation, narratives that we've had for the last 2-3 years, convincing people that you need to think about Kenya or you think about East Africa as a place to do DAC, to now being, the greatest, the biggest company in DAC saying, we're coming to Kenya. That I think is a massive, not just commitment, but also just a massive vote of confidence to say this is possible. And so what we're hoping that this does is not only does it move us to a place where we're starting to think about megaton removals in this part of the world, but begins to really reshape the conversation around what can removals be, what kinds of removals should we be looking at in the East African region. So super excited about what that means from an energy perspective, from the narrative perspective, but more so from a skill perspective. I'm from Africa. We are the youngest continent in the world. For those of you who don't know, mean age is about 19.5 and only getting younger. And so in the next couple of years, we'll probably be the only continent that actually has a massive labor force where everyone else is shrinking. And to some extent, there's a question around, is that a problem? Yes, it is, if we don't do anything about it. But then the green economy and things like DAC and other technologies actually provide a whole new range of economic opportunities that didn't exist. And this becomes an interesting way to massively tap into that talent and get them involved in technology that would not otherwise exist. And the more we can begin to see these kinds of technologies coming onto the continent, for me, I think about it from a place of the massive amount of talent we can unleash in terms of potential, in terms of people thinking about what they can do with the removals. So yes, Climeworks is coming, but hey, I'd love to see some young engineers tinkering and sort of figuring out what's the next thing that we can do with removals. And I think this begins to move the decarbonization efforts from being a global north problem, where we're figuring out all the solutions here and sort of hoping that maybe the global south will catch up one day, to hopefully starting the conversation and starting the journey at the same time. And the last thing I'll leave with you, and people keep asking, why is it important to bring the global south to this conversation? Think about the fact that we're about 7 billion people globally, and the current problem as far as carbon dioxide, the carbon problem is concerned, has really been driven by about 1 billion people, in the sense that most of the energy use is in the global north. And that's not a problem until you realize that you have 6 billion people that will begin to demand the same kind of lifestyle that the global north has. And they will begin to demand for that sort of energy and that sort of just that level of growth. And so for us, it then becomes important that from the word go, can we begin to force a climate positive way of thinking? So rather than just energy for the sake of energy? Can we do renewable energy? Can we begin to think about removals, and what does that mean? So it becomes a way to both decarbonize the world, but then allow this group of people to grow, but in a way that's cleaner than has happened in the past. So again, really important to begin to have these conversations happening at a global level, thinking about standards, thinking about high quality CDR removals. So all the stuff that we are talking about in New York, would love to be able to see the same conversations happening in the global south in different forums. And most of you coming down, we coming up, and making sure that it's a global conversation rather than a global south conversation. So once again, really excited to be here. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Climeworks team. Really excited to bring this partnership to bear, and thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Rich Lesser. I'm Global Chair of BCG. I am so excited to be here with you. This combination of being able to get real support and credibility, which I think the DOE grant, the deal with JP Morgan, others, I think we're in our 6th year of partnership, of working together and engaging. I think it's critically important. And look, we have to start with a sobering reality, which is we are not on a pace to reduce carbon in what we need to stay within any sort of reasonable planetary boundaries. In fact, we're not reducing at all right now. We're going up 1.5% when we should be going down 7%. But even if we succeed in changing that trajectory, and I'm optimistic that we will to some degree, we are extremely unlikely to reduce our way to get anywhere close to 1.5 degrees. So our only pathway to keep this planet the way we aspire all to keep it, and none of us would be here in New York this week if we weren't all committed to that goal, is if we're able to combine reducing carbon as much as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can, with removal technologies that use the full range of solutions, from forestry, whether it's reforestation or stopping deforestation, to biochar, to using our oceans, to CCUS, to direct air capture. We need all of them. We need them at scale, and we need them as fast as we can possibly build them. And it is not a conflict. I've heard one of my great frustrations of the last few months is, some individuals still in the climate community who seem to imply that it's an either-or choice. It's one or the other, and of course it isn't. We fight every day to reduce as much as we can in our industries, in our cars, in our lives, in our buildings, and then we work like hell to build the removal technologies that we need. And in order to do that, we're presented with a conundrum, which is right now some of those technologies, including this one, are way too high cost to be able to scale at the gigaton level that we need them. That's not where we are. And it creates a chicken and the egg cycle, because the only way to lower those technologies in cost is to build scale, and the only way to build scale is to lower the cost. And that's the conundrum that we're living with right now. And it's on all of us in whatever roles we have as technologists who are inventing the sciences that will ultimately be critical to lowering the cost of these technologies, whether it's the colleagues in Climeworks here who work every day to figure out how to go from the science to reality on the ground, whether it's investors or business partners or government policies and governments who make really tough calls about how to allocate scarce public resources. We have to work together to do whatever we can to bring these technologies down in cost and up in scale to make that happen. And we did a report that I had the privilege to share in an event that Climeworks sponsored for the industry earlier this year, in which we concluded from our work that there was substantial potential to lower the cost dramatically, to get below $200 a ton, in theory to get below $100 a ton, though I will tell you personally that feels like a real stretch to me, but that we believe that when we could get below $200 a ton, we would really start to open up market demand, and particularly if we could get below 150, we really open things up, and that is possible. But it requires 4 things. It requires one, that we build that scale, that we have to get into gigaton scale. And just so you can picture gigaton scale, you can barely see the top of the Empire State Building somewhere from one of these rooftops. If you fill the Empire State Building 1,200 times with liquid carbon, you've gotten a gigaton. Like, that's the volume that we're talking about. And we have to do several of those every year. That's what we need to build. That's what the world requires. So we need to do that. We need public policies that will recognize this is municipal waste. We've got wonderful policies in this country and in other countries around the world that lower the cost of capital, that make it easier to build infrastructure, to bring municipal waste to a reasonable and affordable level for society. And roughly, when you look at it on a per ton basis, we're talking roughly the same per ton cost to take the carbon dioxide that is essentially a waste product in the air right now and take it out and bury it deep in the ground so we never have to see it again. We need to recognize we need to bring capital costs down and energy costs down, and that will mean that we're making great progress on renewable energy. We need to continue that, and we'll need to take advantage of it. The Kenya project sounds unbelievable, so that's exciting. And then finally, we need the industry to work together and realize that while they will compete with each other, and that's entirely appropriate, and we want the best technologies to win, but there are also opportunities to collaborate in underlying technologies, whether it's fans or piping or burying carbon in the ground. And if we can build some common platforms that everybody in the industry can take advantage of, build scale in those, then the best technologies can then really have a better chance to get to an affordable cost. And we're excited to be a part of that journey for the industry in total, because we believe in it deeply, and specifically with Climeworks because we love this team and we appreciate the leadership. And we're so pleased to see that that's not just our view, but it's the view of others that we all respect greatly, and partnerships that are getting built in Kenya, in the US, in Europe, and around the world. And so it's just a privilege to be here tonight on a gorgeous night, and at a time when we're trying to keep it feeling like this, not just 10 years from now, but 100 years from now. And so thank you for the privilege of being here tonight.